might find a way to jaywalk in the middle of Center Avenue. Like 12, 35.
All right. Happy Thursday. How's everyone doing? Staying warm. It was 15 degrees when I left the house this morning, and I biked into school, and I barely feel my thumbs by the time I got here. Well, nice to see all of you. We have a pretty big one today. Can someone grab the door? So what we're doing today, we are starting with a bit of an example. I just want to give you a case study for the kinds of things we do in the field, which will call back to your intro micro kinds of ideas. And then we're actually going to get our hands on some data in the second half. But before we do that, we're going to talk about just how we think about data, what it is, some ways of keeping things structured. So that's where we're going. We're going to do our first exercise at the end. So we'll submit our first stuff to Gradescope, and then we'll take off from there. Before we get in, are there any questions? Any bits of housekeeping I'm missing? Yeah. This room gets kind of hot. Did it feel like it got hot at the end of class last time? Or is it just because I was wearing a sweater? I'm gonna maybe try leaving this door open, or like right on the main thoroughfare for economists. So if it gets noisy, we can always close the door. But I think we're gonna try to keep this door propped open and see how that goes. This is my child. Have I told you I had a baby? Maxine, this is from over the holidays. Just what an utter sweetie. Okay. So this is one of my favorite economics papers. We're just going to talk about some of the things briefly. It's one of the things I love about it is that it's pretty simple. And I think it highlights sort of exactly where we're trying to go. So in, anyone from New Jersey? Nice. So this is probably before you were born, but in 1992, the minimum wage in New Jersey was raised from $4.25, which is just amazing that it was ever that low. Inflation, at the time it felt like, obviously much more money than today. But in 1992, it was raised from $4.25 to $5.05. So if you know anything about East Coast geography, New Jersey has this long border. You can't see this, I guess. It's pretty small, but New Jersey has this long border with Pennsylvania. We have Pennsylvania, whose minimum wage is $4.25, the national minimum wage. And then we have New Jersey, who have voted to raise the minimum wage to $5.05, right across the border from each other. This is just a bit of the background here. It's so small you can't read it, but you can access the slides on the course website. So this is the timing. We have March 1992. Both New Jersey and Pennsylvania have the same minimum wage. And then in April, that minimum wage jumps in New Jersey, but the minimum wage stays the same in Pennsylvania. So we sort of have this timing going on. One side of the border is raising its minimum wage, and the other is keeping it constant. So the before and an after on both sides. So this is a bit of the setup. The question we as economists have, I think we talked about this in Intro Micro if you took it with me, and you probably have seen it with really any Intro Micro class you've taken. Essentially, is what would happen, right? We have a question about minimum wage, which is essentially a price control, and we're wondering what happens to employment, what happens to wages, like is a minimum wage a good thing? What happens to employment? So if you're an economist, you're thinking from the perspective of economic theory. So we're just going to run through a bit of a primer. It may have been a while since you've taken your intro micro. So we're just going to run through a bit of economic theory for a second. For most of you, this will be a review. So standard economic theory, we have a supply and a demand curve. Supply is just people bringing things to the market, and the demand is just people wanting things out of the market. We have willingness to pay on the vertical axis, so price, and then our horizontal axis is quantity. We find equilibrium, which is essentially the place in the price and the quantity that clears the market at the intersection of supply and demand. So this is everyone following their individual preferences pushes prices towards this point. So prices hit P star, which is the price where everyone who wants to supply in this market at that price is equal to the number of people willing to buy at that price, which reaches equilibrium. So this is our Q star. And so this is the basics, right? You see this in every econ class. Price ceilings, essentially, if we impose in this market a maximum price, a maximum legal price that's below the market equilibrium price, we say this is binding. So the equilibrium price is not legal. So in this case, we have buyers and sellers pushing prices towards the equilibrium. But we get stuck. We're not allowed to continue moving prices towards equilibrium, so we kind of get stuck by this binding price ceiling. So the closest price we can reach to equilibrium is this price ceiling, which means that's the price that gets chosen by the market. At this price, we have quantity supply simply by intersecting the price ceiling with the supply curve. And we have quantity demand, which we find simply by intersecting the price with the demand curve. So quantity supplied, quantity demanded. As you all know, when these two things are mismatched, we either have a shortage or a surplus. In this case, because quantity supplied is below quantity demanded, we call this a shortage. So the way to think about this, as you remember, is just that we have more available, more demanded than what's available. So essentially you see lots of people in line for things that they can't get. So this is what happens with the price ceiling, the maximum price. On the other side, we could impose a price floor, which is sort of the opposite. We say this is a minimum price. So prices can't go below this price floor, which is a very similar idea, just on the opposite side. We say it's binding if the minimum price is above the equilibrium. So the equilibrium price is not legal. And again, just like in every market, competitive markets with many buyers and many sellers, we get pressure towards the equilibrium. So buyers and sellers following their individual incentives will push the market price towards the equilibrium. But in this case, because the market equilibrium is not legal, we get stuck and we sort of hit the binding price floor. So the price in this market is set by the price floor, and that allows us to find the quantity demanded and quantity supplied. In this case, quantity demanded is below quantity supplied. So we get what we call a surplus. So there's too much available. You show up to the farmer's market, there's extra spinach left over at the end of the day. Not enough people to buy. The price was too high. This is the classic story with price controls. You may have seen minimum wage talked about as a price floor in a labor market. So it's one of these funny little things that economists do. We think of labor markets as like buying and selling of labor, which I always sort of think is a little funny. So the supply curve in the labor market is made up of people like me. So I show up to the university, I provide my services to the university as a worker. And then the university is demanding labor So there's like a job to be done, and so I'm doing the job. Very meta. It's like currently doing the job. So we have a demand curve and a supply curve. In this case, in the labor market, workers are the supply curve and firms are the demand. So this is the labor market. When we impose a price floor on this labor market, this is what we call a minimum wage. It's like the lowest price that can be bargained over. So the lowest legal wage for a worker in the labor market. The lowest legal wage a firm can offer, and the lowest legal wage a worker can receive. And the classic story, as you remember, is that when we impose a minimum wage in a labor market that's competitive, so we have many buyers, many sellers selling the same, exchanging over the same thing, we have a shortage, which we call unemployment. There's not enough jobs to go around. Did I say that wrong? Surplus. Too many workers trying to be hired by the same few number of firms. So this is what we call unemployment. And the classic story you may have heard is that in competitive labor markets, minimum wages lead to unemployment. So this is exactly the question two economists tried to answer using this New Jersey minimum wage situation. So these are two famous economists, turns out. David Card ended up winning the Nobel Prize partly for this, what we're talking about today. And then Alan Kruger, lots of awards going to him too, for this kind of work. This is just one of the many things that they do in this area. So they looked at New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and they saw an opportunity to test this core economic question. Does the minimum wage lead to unemployment? So what they did is essentially call up fast foods. So they called up Burger King, KFC, Wendy's, and Roy Rogers. It's funny because I've actually never been to a Roy Rogers. How many of you have been to a Roy Rogers? Okay, yeah. In an earlier class, someone said they're Roy Rogers on the Turnpike. Is that right? I guess it just like never crossed my mind to ever eat there. I have eaten at Burger King once or twice. When KFC and Wendy's, like maybe once. But the reason Card and Kruger decided to focus on the fast food industry is that this is in the fast food industry, people are much more likely to be employed at a minimum wage. So lots of minimum wage workers, and if we're raising the minimum wage, this is very likely to impact the fast food industry, if any industry at all. So they called around to like hundreds of states, 410, and got a bunch of information. This is some of the information they collected when they called around to these different restaurants. They found this is so these are this is the breakdown of the number of stores for each state. So in New Jersey, they found 330, and then Pennsylvania is about 80. This number here is FTE, is just like a measure of how much work is being done at each one of these restaurants. And this is just an average. So these are like average employment numbers in each one of the states. And then they looked at the starting wages. You can see Pennsylvania and New Jersey are pretty similar. Pennsylvania is off by like 2 pennies, which is essentially equal.
So does that mean the equilibrium is 460 instead of 425?
The equilibrium
For wage. Does that mean it's at 460 around the 425?
Yeah, this is a great question. So James is wondering, what's the equilibrium price before we raise the minimum wage? Because we already have a minimum wage set at $4.25, it's a little difficult to know what the equilibrium price would be. But yeah, so pre-raising of the minimum wage in New Jersey, before we raise it, we have the minimum wage that's not exactly equal to the minimum wage that's set. So it's a little bit higher than the minimum wage. But as I'll show you in a second, actually a lot of people are employed exactly at minimum wage before we raise it. So yeah, long story short, this isn't exactly the intersection of supply and demand in some of our classic way. And then, so yeah, good question. And then this is sort of the percentage of workers who are working at minimum wage. So maybe this kind of also answers some of your question. Lots of people are being employed at the price floor. Okay, any questions here? Any others, I should say? All right, so this is some of the basics. I find tables harder to read than figures. So I just want to walk you through the distribution of wages across both states before and after the minimum wage policy was implemented in New Jersey. So in February 1992, lots of people were in the service industry, the fast food industry, were making exactly the minimum wage, which to me, $4.25 just sounds crazy low. But at the time, this was sort of more standard. Inflation and all of that. So lots of people were being employed at exactly the minimum wage. There's like a spike somewhere up here, so right around $5. And you can see, so the horizontal axis is just the wage bins. So we've taken all the wages and just put them into bins as a histogram, which we'll talk a lot more about in the coming weeks. The vertical axis is just the percentage of stores, so you can see which wage ranges are most common. And then I've also broken this data out by state. So you can see New Jersey is in the dark color, and then Pennsylvania is in the shaded. After we impose the minimum wage policy in New Jersey, you can see the axis changes a little bit because we have to account for a higher bin at $5.05. But the distribution of wages in Pennsylvania stays about the same. Very little is changing in Pennsylvania. You can see this because the spikes happen at the same places as we do in the original figure. What changes is New Jersey. When we impose the minimum wage in New Jersey, everyone who's making wages below the new minimum wage essentially get bumped up into the new minimum wage bin. So many, many more people are now making a much higher wage than they were before. If you're making $4.25, jumping up to $5.05 is a very large jump. Yeah, question?
Wouldn't the percentage of the wage also go up because some of Pennsylvania has a lot of working in New Jersey?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the paper actually talks a bit about this. This is what's called a spillover. So if you live in Eastern Pennsylvania or New Jersey, people cross the border for employment. So some people will live in Pennsylvania and then work in New Jersey, and so maybe some people will jump across the border to take advantage of this higher minimum wage. Yeah, and so they actually talk about this in the paper and try to account for those things. This is a great, deep methodological question, a lot of respect. We're gonna stay a little bit higher level than exactly that question. Remind me of your name? AJ? So yeah, AJ is pointing out that because we're examining locations right across the border, we actually could think about crossing the border, and that might be a methodological limitation for us. Yeah, for sure. Any other questions here? That was a good one. Okay, so we have this figure showing that the minimum wage truly is binding. So in New Jersey, after imposing this minimum wage, we have effectively raised many people's wages substantially. This is a pretty big jump in someone's income. You can even do the math. What's the percentage change in your income when the minimum wage goes up like this? But the question is not, are wages going up? We know they will. The question is, does this lead to a decrease in the quantity demanded of labor? As the price of labor goes up, are firms going to back off how much they're employing? This is the core question. And if you hear anything about the minimum wage discussion today, lots of people pushing for a higher minimum wage. This kind of analysis can help us think through those kinds of questions. So what did they find? Well, this is a figure how they set up the data. We're going to talk more about these kinds of models later in the semester. This is what we call a difference in difference. It's a pretty fancy technique, but it's not too difficult to learn right off the bat. We have two time periods. We have before the minimum wage goes into effect, and we have after the minimum wage goes into effect. And Card and Kruger called up these 400 locations and asked them for their employment data before and after. So we have data on both. On the vertical axis, we have FTE, which is, you can essentially think of as how much employment is being done on average at locations in both states. And the first line to look at is Pennsylvania. So this is essentially no change in the minimum wage, and employment has gone down. What's going on in the broader economic landscape at the time is that there's like a mini recession going on. Economic conditions are not good, and so total employment is just going down across the board, unrelated to any change in the minimum wage. So we haven't changed anything about the minimum wage in Pennsylvania, and employment has gone down. So if the same thing were true, if these broader economic forces were acting on New Jersey in the same way as in Pennsylvania, and there were no impact of the minimum wage on employment, we would see a decrease in total employment in New Jersey. So if there was no impact, we'd see a decrease in employment in New Jersey. If there was a negative impact, we would see a steeper decrease in New Jersey than we did in Pennsylvania. So if the minimum wage is bad for employment, the line for New Jersey should be steeper, because the change would be greater, be more negative than it was in Pennsylvania. But it turns out it was less steep. So the change in employment actually went up. Because after we imposed a minimum wage in New Jersey, total employment in New Jersey went up. And when we compare that change to the change in Pennsylvania, right across the border, same economic conditions, like neighbors essentially, the conclusions become even more stark. This is some of the direct results, just in a table form. So let me just talk you through how to read this. So this number here is before the policy in Pennsylvania, the average employment. This is the same number for New Jersey. So this is a slightly lower employment in New Jersey, and we get a negative difference. So Pennsylvania employs more people on average per location than New Jersey does. After, we see that the sort of broader economic landscape has pushed towards less employment. So employers are buying less labor. And then in New Jersey, we've actually seen an increase. So this last row represents the change during this time, like I showed on the figure before, the change in employment between these two time periods in each one of the states. This double difference here is just the increase in New Jersey relative to Pennsylvania. So if we held Pennsylvania constant, what's the employment change in New Jersey? And that's clearly positive. I think tables, as you'll see over the next couple of weeks, I think tables are not as effective generally at communicating numerical information as figures. So what I've done is compiled this thing. This is a figure that captures the information in the last table, but I think much more effectively. Pennsylvania saw a decrease during this time. During the exact same time, right across the border, New Jersey saw an increase. The only difference between these two places, essentially, the only change that's happening is that one state is implementing the minimum wage. James.
This is kind of similar to the question you had earlier, but is it possible that the recession lessened the increase in the amount of people that gained a job in New Jersey because of the recession, and that the gain in New Jersey stemmed a lot from people in Pennsylvania trying to get a higher paying job in New Jersey because of the recession?
So yeah, it's like, if I can maybe restate your question, it's like, is part of what's going on in Pennsylvania the fact that people are now trying to flee into New Jersey because the wages are better?
Yeah, but because of the recession, New Jersey can't hire as many people, so now their growth isn't as much as it would have been without the recession.
Yeah, so this effectively comes down to spillovers. I think your question is actually pretty intricate and interesting. The short answer is like, we do need to think about the spillovers. In simple terms, these are our numbers, and the paper actually goes into some more detail about these things. And it's essentially a question of like, if we were to just put both on separate islands and no commuting between them, would we still see the same effect? And the paper goes into some detail about how they show that would be true, essentially. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that answer.
Okay. Yeah, let's, we can chat more about that. But yeah, so short answer, James's question essentially is part of this thing, the decrease in employment in Pennsylvania coming from people fleeing to New Jersey, similar to AJ's earlier. And the short answer is, we don't think so. So what's happening here, I mean, certainly if wages are going up and the price of labor is going up, following the model we talked about, perfectly competitive markets, labor demand should go down. So we definitely should not be hiring more people. This is inconsistent with that. We see an increase in labor demand. So independent of whether people are crossing the border or not. Fast food locations in New Jersey are just hiring more, whether they're coming from Pennsylvania or from New Jersey. And this is inconsistent with the standard model. Yeah. Okay, love that.
I'm wondering if there's an increase in the market for fast food during economic hardship, like if people spend more money on like cheap fast food.
That's a great question. Remind me of your name.
Jackson.
So Jackson's question is, could it be that during economic hardship, people spend more at fast food? And the short answer is very plausible. So people could be, so recessions, maybe that leads to more people buying food at Roy Rogers, which none of us have ever eaten there. If that were true though, we would see more people buying fast food in Pennsylvania, and we'd see more people buying fast food in New Jersey. So that would affect both places equally. And what we're doing here is actually controlling for that. We're comparing the changes in both places. James?
My question. Does this imply that New Jersey was underhiring? Like they had a price that was below the equilibrium, and then now that they raised it to some degree, they've also increased the number of actual jobs.
So yeah, it's a great question. Essentially, James's question is essentially, are people, was the original equilibrium hiring too low? Were fast food locations in New Jersey under hiring before the minimum wage went in? And the short answer is it probably it sort of doesn't exactly matter which way, like whether they're under hiring or over hiring. Either way, we weren't. These results are not consistent with a decrease in labor demand. Right. Either way, whether we were under hiring or over hiring, we're now hiring more, and especially compared to Pennsylvania. we're definitely not decreasing. Yeah.
It's not really a fair comparison though, to use Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Like Pennsylvania has a lot more business that's going on. It has a much higher population. Wouldn't like New York or Ohio, Pennsylvania be a much more fair comparison?
Yeah, so this is, remind me of your name?
Maddox.
Maddox? So Maddox is saying, how can, this is a great question. How can we compare New Jersey and Pennsylvania when they're so radically different? The first thing we can do is look at places that are pretty close to the border. So they're not that far away from each other. So like within driving distance. The second, and I think the most important way we address this question is we're comparing changes. So it's not so much that we're comparing them, it's that we're looking at how employment changes during this period. So if it were something to do with like Philly specifically, Philly shows up both in the pre and in the post. So just because we're in Philadelphia and not in New Jersey, we see the same Philadelphia both times. And so we're essentially controlling for anything that doesn't change during this period. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to talk about this in part 5. This is really good. Any other questions? Yeah.
Why did he sample way less Pennsylvania stores compared to New Jersey stores?
Yeah, I don't actually know the answer to that question. So this is a good question. So New Jersey had, what, 331 stores, and Pennsylvania had 80. I think by modern standards, usually what we do is try to balance those samples. In 1992, they either didn't have access or they ran out of money or something. Yeah, usually we try to balance those, and in this study we did. Remind me of your name? Irwin? Yeah, good question. Any other questions? This is really good. You all asking these kinds of questions, this is what I look for. Like, I put a lot of work into bringing this stuff to you, and I truly appreciate it when you ask these kinds of questions. It makes me better at my job. So this is inconsistent with our model of minimum wage in competitive markets, with many buyers and many sellers selling exactly the same thing. So what does this mean? Does this mean economics is wrong? What do you think? How many of you think economics is wrong? Hands up. How many of you think economics is right, but the model isn't applied correctly? Hands up. Okay. Yeah, maybe I primed you to answer that one. That's the correct answer. We'll talk more about this in a second. I just want to give you some of the conclusions here. The prediction, higher minimum wage leads to lower labor demand, so fewer people employed. But what we actually see is that there was at least no change, and it could be that there's an increase in employment in total after a minimum wage is imposed, in this case. This is the main conclusion, or one of the main paragraphs or sentences from the paper. Contrary to the central prediction of the textbook model, we find no evidence that the rise in New Jersey's minimum wage reduced employment. In fact, it sort of looks like their employment went up in New Jersey in the fast food industry. So this was in 1992. This, I think, is a great example of how we use data to inform our models. Great economic data analysis done here. That was what, like, more than 30 years ago. In that time, we've studied this stuff using data in many other environments. The general message, general sort of wisdom we've arrived at is part of what's going on here is the market is not perfectly competitive. There are not unlimited number of employers in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. You can't just easily switch between jobs. The market is not perfectly competitive. If you remember the ideas of monopoly from your intro class, where market power, having few sellers or few buyers, changes market dynamics, that's what we believe is going on here too. And that is not, this result is not inconsistent with a model of few buyers of labor, what we call monopsony.
Then, are there any competitive job markets where fast food is actually?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not a labor economist. I struggle to find one, I think. Yeah. Labor markets are challenging to study, for sure. Any other questions? Yeah.
Was there another study done on how raising minimum wage affects prices at the restaurant?
Yeah, so I do think the paper goes into this. I can send you a link to the paper if you want to take a look at it. I don't remember exactly what they concluded about prices. I think they didn't see a dramatic rise in prices in New Jersey, but I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. Yeah, great question, Maddox. James?
Sorry, last question.
Yeah.
So then, with the argument that raising the minimum wage for decrease employment, what is the explanation when you actually do see that happen? Like, if raising the minimum wage actually does decrease employment,
Yeah.
the jobs aren't perfectly competitive, what's the explanation for that?
So yeah, so it's like if we do raise the minimum wage and then we did see a decrease in employment, what's going on? It's probably because the market is more competitive than this situation. Yeah. Okay, this is to set up what we're doing in this class. These are the kinds of things we like to think about, right? We had an economic question, and we had some data that allowed us to answer that question. This is generally believed to be causal. There are lots of, like the paper goes into all the details for why we don't think this is simply a correlation, and we think it's a causal relationship. In this class, none of you, at least in all of my semesters teaching this class, I've never seen a causal paper. We're not doing causation in this class. We're going to talk about it in a way for me to try to convince you that what you're doing is not causal. We're essentially only going to look at relationships between variables and make claims about whether those relationships exist in the data. We are not going to do causation. But this is to show you the kinds of things we can do in economics and why we care. Truly, we can inform how we think about our models. After this paper was published, we pivoted in a lot of ways. This moved the field. Okay, any questions? All right, are we warm? I'm gonna turn this, do you mind this fan being on? It's kind of noisy. You don't? You can hear me just fine? My baby, Maxine, sleeps with a white noise machine, and I always wondered if this fan puts people to sleep. What we're doing today, the rest of class, is talking about how we organize our thinking around data. We're going to become very familiar with working with data sets, both in Excel and primarily in Python. What Card and Kruger did looks simple and looks straightforward, but there's a lot of nuance to what they did. And what we're going to do today is start from the ground floor. How do we organize our thinking around data sets? So essentially, this is maybe a great question to start with, right? Which is, what is data? You all have taken a statistics class. You've thought about realizations of random variables. Data is a realization of a random variable. Our general notation for data is X. We observe X. So in the case of the New Jersey study that we just talked about, we saw exactly what happened to a bunch of fast food restaurants. That's a realization of a random variable. What happened in Pennsylvania and New Jersey is X. What we're interested in, though, is not X. We can fully describe X. But what we're interested in is the process that generates X. What we're interested in is what's the effect on employment of a minimum wage. That's F. That process generated the data in Pennsylvania and New York, but we don't directly observe the effect of minimum wage on employment. We just observe the realization of some underlying process. F is generally what we want to make claims about, but what we observe is just X. Any questions about this distinction? So X is our data. In general, we want to make claims about F. But in general, we won't observe F. And that's a core tension we're going to keep coming back to. And in reality, like, we will never see F. We'll never see the true effect of minimum wage unemployment. So we kind of break this into two parts. The first part is descriptive. That's what we're doing in part 1 and part 2. We're describing X. But then in parts 3 to 5, we're trying to make inferences about F from what we do see, which is X. And that part, I've been teaching this material for a while. This part, every time I teach it, feels a bit like magic. How we can go from just seeing X to making probabilistic claims about F. You've seen this before. All of the ideas are probably already there for you. But we're going to put them together in a sort of different way. All right. So this is the basics of what data is. How do we organize it? So there's a lot going on with the data set. In general, if you don't have this framework in mind, it's easy to get lost in the soup of a spreadsheet. We have essentially two kinds of indexes. We write X, which is our data, and we subscript it with I and T. I is an index we use for entities. So this can be something like people or firms or countries. So this is just like the individual. And these are unordered. So in the survey, which we've been working on, you've entered your information. I'm going to have a row that corresponds to you. All of your information in a row. I'm going to have an identifier, which tells me, it sort of allows me to keep track of who you are. I don't think you put your name in, but I have some ID that gives me like something about the row. It's going to be in a list, so there will be an order, but fundamentally it's unordered because it doesn't really matter who comes first and who comes last. I have all of you in an unordered way. T is order. We generally refer to T as time. So this is like days, months, years, and this is an ordered index. So we can work with two subscripts, I and T. These are our index variables. And we generally don't care about them directly. This is a word I struggle to pronounce. Substantive. Substantive. Insert self-deprecating joke here. I can't even come up with a joke. I can't pronounce substantive. What are we doing here? You don't even laugh at my jokes. And then we have index variables. And we're going to walk through a bunch of these using real data sets in a second, just to get some practice with this. But this is generally the notation we use here. We have subscripts. We could even include a J. We're not going to do that in this class, but you don't have to stop at 2. But generally, we in this class, we're just going to talk about 2 subscripts. And then we also have dimensions of data. So as we're getting into the work, this sort of diagramming data becomes very helpful to think about the models we can build and the visualizations we can use. So there are 3 dimensions of data: data structure, variable type, and the number of substantial variables. So there are 3 general kinds of data structures. We have cross-sectional, which is when we have many individuals at one point in time. So there's no time component to the data at all. So the survey is simply taking a cross-section of students in this class. So it's a cross-sectional data set, is the survey. And in this case, we use I to denote the individuals. We also have time series, which is one variable, one value through time. I'm going to show you some examples of this in a second. Panel data is essentially combining these two things. We have both a cross-section, so we have many individuals, but we have those many individuals through time. Panel data is my favorite. This is what I wrote my dissertation using. It's much more challenging to work with, and I'm going to show you some of the reasons why at the end of part 2. Then we have variable types. Generally, we group these into 2 categories, categorical and numerical. This is categorizing X, not the index variables. The index variables tell us about the data structure, but the variable itself, X, is generally broken into these 2 broad buckets. There are actually 5 total buckets, and we're going to talk about those in a second. But variable type describes the X. And then the last thing is the number of variables. So how many substantive variables we have. So as you'd expect, univariate is 1, bivariate is 2, and multivariate is more than 2. All right, any questions here? We're going to work with specific examples of this in a second. So let me just get into a little more detail and give you some examples about each one of these dimensions of data. Essentially, a data structure is a question of which indices are active. So if we're looking at cross-section, we don't really need to deal with time. So we usually just drop the T subscript. And we just say, we'll worry about I. So this is something like household incomes in 2024. So this is one point in time. I'm not going to worry about keeping track of time because it's the same for everyone. And all I have to do is keep track of which household I'm looking at. We also have time series. So this is like average income between 2 years. So this is an example. So it's one type of variable. It's average income for the US, but then it's over time. So I don't need to keep track of the index because it's just average for the US. All I need to keep track of is the time. And then panel is both income and time. So this is like I have every household in the US between these 2 dates. So many entity indexes and many periods through time. Okay, any questions here? By the end of class, you'll be familiar with diagramming data in this way. Okay, and then we have variable types. So one of the kinds of values we can have for X. Like I said, we have 2 broad groups, categorical and numerical. Within categorical, we can break it down into generally 3 types. Binary is like a yes or no kind of question. So 2 categories. Are you employed? Yes or no? I don't think maybe is like, if you said maybe, I would say you're not employed. Nominal is, I think, the worst name for this. I think this makes it sound like it's a number. Nominal categorical is just things that don't have an inherent order. So the example I'm using here is blood type. You could list blood type alphabetically if you wish, but the alphabet is just names that we assign to the different blood types. There's no like real order to blood types. If you ask a blood bank how they order their blood, there's not sort of a systematic way besides just the labeling of it. And then ordinal categorical is something that can be ordered, but it's still best described using a categorical variable. So it's not something we can put numbers to. So my example here is education. We have these different groups. So high school, bachelor's, master's, and PhD. These are clearly in order. The intervals between them you could think of as being meaningful if you counted in total years required for the degree. But simply just looking at these degrees, they're in an order and they're categories. You may want to quibble with me if you wish that the intervals, like a bachelor's is usually 4 years, but it isn't always. Bachelor's is just a a category of a degree a person might have. Any questions about this? Yes.
So like if I wanted to do colors, would that be nominal or
Uh,
so technically categorize it by shades?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've even used color as an example for categorical in the past, and I took it out because this one is a little controversial. You can think of like organizing colors based on their wavelength. Most of the time, we don't think of colors in that way, but you definitely could. So I would say it's maybe a gray area. Yeah. Any other questions? And like I mentioned, education, you could count this in years of schooling. And so that you could turn that into a numerical variable if you wish. So there's always going to be a bit of gray area, but this is the general way of thinking about this. Is it best described using categories, and is it ordered? Numerical, I don't make a big fuss about discrete versus continuous. I'm giving you this because I'm asking this of you on upcoming work. But we're not going to worry about this so much going forward. Discrete continuous variables are things that we count. So like, I have one child. I'm generally not going to have like a third of a child. I'm not really sure how that would happen. I guess you could have a half sibling, but I don't think we count like half children in that same way. Could be wrong. So things that are countable, and then continuous numerical. These are just like things that that we keep track of on a real number line. So like incomes, your income is you can count pennies. Like a penny is the smallest unit of measure for dollars. So sometimes like all of these things are a little bit fuzzy, but in general, like if it's not counting stuff, which I would say money isn't really counting, then we would call that a continuous numerical variable. Yeah, James.
Off-topic question, but does getting rid of pennies increase inflation?
That is off topic. We can chat about it after class. I think, yeah, getting rid of the penny is very okay. But I don't know what happens to inflation. Okay, any questions here about categorizing variables? Okay, and then generally the steps we're going to follow, particularly in the first 3 parts of the semester, but really all semester, whenever we work with data, we are performing 3 steps. 1, we're choosing what data goes into our data set. So this could be how we collect the data. This could be after we've collected the data, how do we sort it, filter it. What does our data contain? That's the first step. How do we get what data is on our computer? Second step is how do we work with the data directly, what we call a transformation. Sometimes the data isn't going to come to us in exactly the form that we need. And so what we do is we change it using a computer into the thing that we do actually need. We're going to talk about a lot of examples of data transformations over the next couple of weeks. And then the last thing we do is we take our data and we encode it. So this is essentially data visualization or turning it into a table. So summarizing it in a way that can be understood. So how do we take our data and then make it essentially readable without just looking directly at the data? These are the main 3 steps for data visualization and summarization broadly. And we're going to follow these through parts 1 and 2. And we're going to keep track of all of the different kinds of operations we use with these 3 steps. But you're going to see these 3 steps over and over again. So the way we talked a bit about this last time, but the way we're going to progress is essentially like this. This week, we're talking about the framework. The next 2 parts, we're going to talk about summarizing variables and then relationships. And then the last part of the semester is building up the inference component. So how do we go from not just summarizing individual variables and relationships in our data in X, but how do we then turn X and our summarization of it into something we can make claims about the data generating process F. And that's great stuff. Any questions here? So this is I just want to give you like an outline of generally how classes are going to go. This is the first one where we're going to do an exercise. Often I will give you a concept video before class. This will not be a surprise to you. It'll come to your inbox if it's there. Often classes won't have this. This is a bit of an experiment for me this semester to get you on the same page at the beginning of class. So if we don't take attendance, we'll have a quiz. It'll be like one question based on like a 5-minute video I've sent you of me just looking into the camera and talking to you. And then during class, we'll do an exercise. Essentially, exercises in class you can think of as guided homework prep. So we're going to do work together. I'm going to give you the answers. All you do is just turn it in, which will get you prepped for homework. I would go so far as to say if you're not working with someone on your homework, you're not doing this class right. So part of what we're doing with exercises is getting you in contact with people to work on the homework with. And then homework is designed to be preparation for the mini exams, which happen in class. So this is all sort of sequential in a way that should, by the end of it, have you fully prepared for everything we do. If there's ever a time you don't feel fully prepared for what we're doing, come sit down and talk to me, and we can make that happen. Okay, any questions? All right. So this is the general structure. I think we should get started. Y'all want to do some work? That's not the rousing enthusiasm I'm looking for. So we're going to start with exercise 0. This is just our first exercise. We're going to turn this in on GradeScope. This will be the first thing we do. We're just going to diagram some data sets. So let me walk you through the beginning. And I anticipate we spent a lot of time with questions on the minimum wage example. So I think we're not going to get through everything. So we'll talk about that at the end of class. So if you turn to the way exercises will work, you'll go to the course page, and I'll have the exercise listed here. This is a link. So here I have the slides for today. I have so these are all in PDF form, so the kind of form you can print. I also have an interactive version. This is the version I use to present, which includes code snippets. Sometimes we'll write some code, and sometimes I like to just give you the code in the slides. If you use the interactive version, you can copy and paste it just directly. Just by clicking on a button, it'll copy the code, and then you can put it in your notebook. So I give that to you if you want to use it. Sometimes I use notes, like I have notes for what we're covering today, and sometimes I'll post them. So for today's class, I've posted notes that I use just as preparation. Then for the exercises, these will look a little bit just the format will look different once we make it into part 1. But I have a link to a notebook, which we'll talk about next time. This is a Python environment, which we'll get started with on Tuesday. If you click on this, it'll take you there. I've also provided 5 data sets, which we're about to go through. Okay, so once you've navigated here, if you click on this first data set, it will download it for you. So I'm just going to download it. It's going to end up in my downloads folder. So I have dataset 1. Once it's downloaded, you'll see it's called dataset 1 .csv. This is a little bit technical, and we don't really have to deal with this. You don't really have to know this at this point. But CSV stands for comma separated values. This is just a format that we generally store data. This is the most common format, CSV. When we double click on this, it will open the CSV file in a program. In this case, we're going to open it in Excel. This is not an Excel file. This is a CSV file that Excel is reading. How many of you have Excel installed on your computer? Okay, nice. If you don't, we can chat after class about it and get you access. Pitt has institutional access to it, so it will be free for you. If I double click on this, it opens in Excel, and it generally looks like this. This is the general structure for data sets. And you can see there are two columns. I have one column for year and one column for real GDP. We're going to do some operations in Excel next class, but for today, what we're focusing on is diagramming data. So this is opening the data set. This is generally how I will give you data, is a link on the website. So here, what we're going to do in the next couple of minutes, essentially the rest of class, is try to diagram a couple of data sets. We're going to start with data set 1. You have it downloaded. You have it loaded in Excel if you wish. I also give you a little bit of a snippet of what the data looks like here. My question for you, what's the data structure? What's the variable type? What's the index? And what are the number of variables? So there are generally there are exactly 4 questions. I would start with the index, try to find what the index is, and then try to classify the data structure using the index. We're going to work together. We'll figure out the flow as we go through. But the first thing I want you to do is turn to someone near you and say hello and say your name. All right, as you're getting started with this first question, does someone want to tell me what the index variable is? Yeah. Year, yeah. So this is on the more straightforward side, right? We just have year, and it's labeled as year, and it keeps track of time for us. Remind me of your name? Wyatt. So Wyatt's saying this is a time index, an ordered index that represents time. Someone wants to describe what the data structure is. Yeah.
Time series.
Time series. Yes, we have a time variable. We would call this, time series. And remind me of your name? Ryan. So Wyatt and Ryan. Unfortunately for the two of you, I give out lecture points. when people get things wrong. You both got it right, so unfortunately I can't give you lecture points. Lecture points, if I haven't mentioned them to you already, they don't count towards course credit, unfortunately. I can't exchange them for money. You can post about them on social media, I guess. You can write about them in your journal. They don't mean anything, but I give them out. So keep track. Okay, so we have time series. We know year is the index variable. Has anyone figured out what the variable type is yet? Yeah, Maddox? Continuous. Yeah, continuous numerical. Anything that involves money, which real GDP is a measure of dollars, would be continuous. Continuous numerical. And then someone wanted to tell me what the number of variables is? Okay, I got mixed answers. How many of you think it's 1? Hands up. Commit to it. Okay, hands down. How many of you think it's 2? The answer here is 1. We have one index variable, which is not an informative variable, right? This is just an index. Then we have real GDP, which is the substantive variable. I pronounced it correctly then. And we have one of them. Even though there are 2 columns, we only have one variable. Any questions here? Should we do another one? So you can download the data set if you like for the next one. I have the answers here on screen. This is how I would visualize it, and we'll come back to visualizations in parts 1 and 2. But this is the second exercise. So this is identifying the diagram for this data set. This is data set 2. If you want to download it, that's on the course website. We'll do more with those data sets next class. For now, turn to your neighbor, give them a compliment, even if it's just as simple as you don't smell bad. And then try to diagram this.
Yeah, like just describing what yeah, if I do, I would look at the half letters. Yeah, I would say, yeah, if I do,
I think that the first one that you did that was whether it's like
Okay, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Someone want to tell me what's going on here? What's the diagram? I'm sorry to interrupt your great work. We have to leave here in 5 minutes. I have one more to do. Someone want to tell me the index?
The index is household ID.
Household ID, right. So we have an index representing households. We can see that these are not ordered. They are ordered in that they're numbers and they increase. But the numbers themselves are not meaningful. It's just a way of keeping things organized. So this is an unordered index. So we could rename this I if we wish. And then, so what's the data structure? James?
Cross-sectional.
Cross-sectional. So this is just a bunch of households at one given time. We don't have to keep track of the time because it's just at the same time. So this is cross-sectional. What's the variable type? Binary. Remind me of your name?
Casey.
Casey. So Casey's saying employment status is binary. Unemployed, employed. I even use this in my example of binary categorical data. If you say maybe, I would question that. Yeah, great. And then the last one is the number of variables. So how many variables do we have here? Hands up for 1. Hands up for 2. Hands up for 3. It's what? Univariate data. Any questions here? So these are the answers. You can find them in the slides. This is how I would visualize binary categorical data using a horizontal bar chart, which we will talk about probably next class. Okay, third question, and I think this will be the last one for time constraint reasons. Diagram this one. Take a few minutes.
Yeah.
That's a gray scope issue. Just put one of the correct ones.
Okay, I was gonna say.
So there are 2 correct.
This is what I'm assuming. Yes.
Oh, it's not what you're
I was thinking of yeah, because the income, or I don't have the
Yeah, you can.
oh, okay. Yeah, I was looking up there. You're definitely right.
Wait, household items.
Yeah. I think it might be 2 babies. Because the household ID I don't think is like a variable, and then I think the rent is just it's not like a variable. Maybe it's just used to like help describe the data or to show the change in the data. But then the income is
Exactly. What are your names?
Jagger.
Jagger. And what's your name?
Bill.
Say that again.
I'm Bill Gay.
One more time.
Bill Gay.
Bill Gay.
Yeah.
Nice to meet both of you. Okay, someone want to help me out here? What are the indexes? Or index?
Household ID and year.
Okay, so we have 2. Remind me of your name? Aiden. So Aiden is saying that we have 2 indexes. 1 household ID and 1 year. We have a household ID representing each household. You can see that a single household shows up multiple times. This is part of why having an index is important, because it allows us to keep track of the same individual across multiple years. So what's the data structure? Panel. And why is this panel?
Because it's both like the house ID and the year.
So we have both an I and a T index, one that's ordered through time and one that's cross-sectional. Yeah. Remind me of your name?
Micah?
Micah. And Aiden? Okay, so panel data, we have 2 indexes. What's the variable type? This is a poorly framed question because there are more than one. If there are more than one, you just give me the variable types for each one separately. James.
I said discrete numerical.
Okay, so this you're saying this is discrete, and this one is continuous. So this is sort of where I don't make a big fuss about whether it's discrete or continuous. I would list anything that measures income or anything that can be measured in dollars. I would measure that. I would call that continuous. But if we're just counting dollars, maybe you could say it's an integer.
I said discrete because it doesn't have savings, not savings, change. So I assume it will be rounded up and rounded up.
Yeah. So this is part of the place where I don't make a big fuss about this. Yeah. But I would call this, if I were to be nitpicky about this, I would say this is continuous numerical for both of them. Okay. Any questions? And then the number of variables. How many of you think there's one variable? How many of you think there are two variables? How many of you think there are three variables? And how many of you think there are four? The answer here is two. We have two index variables and two substantive variables. So the number of variables here is two. Okay, so Gradescope has a little bit of a formatting issue. When you enter for panel, you can only choose one. If you choose either I or T, that's correct. So either the I index or the T index. And then if you wish, there are two more questions. I would recommend you do these and enter them in Gradescope. Answers are in the slides, but you do not need to for full credit. All right. So nice having you all in class. I'm sorry I kept you over 2 minutes. I'll let you go early next time. I'll see you all on Tuesday. Yeah.
And I don't know how the taking attendance works.
Yes, we'll start taking attendance after the ad drop period. So I didn't do that today.
Okay, thank you.
How do I access Grayscape? Do I just click this?
Yeah, it should bring it up for you. And
That's not really Trump.
okay. So let's see. Sometimes is this Safari?
Yeah.
It's very nice meeting you.
Have you used Gradescope before? Okay. So
This is only my second semester.
okay. Well, welcome. I guess.
I appreciate it.
You say Kyle?
Huh?
You say Kyle?
Casey.
Casey. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So maybe try a different browser.
Like Chrome?
I think Chrome should not give you issues.
Okay. Alright then.
Nice seeing you, James.
Alright, James, I'll see you, bro.
That's what I would recommend. And if that doesn't work, then actually, can I try one thing really quick? Computer down. Yeah, maybe try Chrome and see if that works.
Okay.
This has happened to people before, and I think Chrome would fix it.
Alright, perfect.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Alright, no, it's all good. I'll use Chrome. And if that doesn't work, I'll just email you. Alright, thank you. I hope you have a great
And I tried downloading it and dragging it. It wouldn't.
Yeah, so that's a little. Let me show you.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think if you right-click it and then download linked file, I think that works.
And then dragging.
So I right-clicked on the link
Yeah.
and then download linked file, and then that will appear in your downloads folder.
Yeah, I think I did that and then just tried to drag it on into Excel and it wouldn't even show up.
Oh yeah, so that can I open your downloads
Yeah.
folder?
It's at the bottom.
Yeah, so if I click on this, it should actually just open in. Okay, so nice. It opens in numbers. If you right-click. Can I open in Finder?
Yeah.
if I right click on this, it'll have open with, and then
Okay,
I can
so
click on
I can.
Excel.
Okay.
That should work for you.
How do I make that default?
So yes, you can go to settings and then
Okay.
change it to default.
Okay.
I think, yeah, you can just use, what's it called? Overview.
Okay.
Command spacebar, and you can just type it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you need help, I can help you out.
Thank you.
Hey.
We can find the slideshow on like Canvas or anything. Where
Oh yeah, so I usually don't post it to Canvas. It's always going to be on my course page.
Oh, gotcha.
So
I was on Canvas, but I was like, it's really not there.
so yeah, slides,
Oh,
and then the
gotcha.
interactive version is right here.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
I think this is better than Canvas because
Yeah.
you don't have to log in to access it.
Yeah.
You just pin it to your browser.
Mhm.
It's always there.
Definitely.
Okay,
Awesome.
awesome.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a
Yeah.
great weekend.
See you. Hey.
I think I was having the same problem as her. I was like, I didn't quite follow, so do you
Yeah,
mind
yeah.
taking me through the steps again?
Yep. So you've downloaded it. That's
Yeah,
nice.
First one.
And then, so probably what's going on. So if you double click on it, brings up numbers,
Yeah.
which can work. Some of the things we'll do will be a little more sophisticated than what numbers does.
Yeah.
So what I recommend is you could either right click on this, open with Microsoft Excel if you want, or you could try to change the default.
To Excel.
Yeah, let's see if we can just do that right now.
Probably just download everything.
Yeah, let's try. Okay, so that doesn't change the default, unfortunately. So you have to go into default apps, I guess, and change Excel to be the default.
Okay. And I had a separate question about
Okay.
the content today.
Yeah.
So in like not the last one, but the two examples before,
Yeah.
why were they like one variable? I didn't quite understand that part.
Yeah, not two variables.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have one column that's one of the index variables. So I think in the first case it was a time variable, so like year. We don't consider that to be a meaningful variable. It's just the index.
So it's all about the substantive variable.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could think of the number of variables as being the number of substantive variables.
So in the last example, the ID household ID and the year were the indices.
Yes.
And then the income savings were the substantive, and
That's
that's,
right.
what counted towards the bivariate.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good. And what's your name?
Darren.
Darren. Darren?
Yeah.
Yeah,
People
good to
get
have you in
that
class.
mixed up with Derek all the time.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll try to get it right.
Yeah, no.
Hi.
I just had a quick question. I
Yeah.
signed up for your class a bit late, so I missed your
Okay.
Tuesday lecture. Was there anything I missed, like syllabus / like content wise?
We basically just covered the beginning of the slides, which you can find. So yeah, it's basically just like the intro kind of things, like first day kind of stuff. Just like what we're covering, how it's structured, and then some of the expectations for your work over the semester. So yeah, that was mainly it. And you could see it all in the slides. You can access it here,
Okay.
just in the slides.
Alright. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to have you.
Just what content will cover in the exam? Will it cover lots of code?
It will not.
No.
I will not have you write any code in class. Yeah.
Yeah. How about the homework?
Yeah, so homework will be some coding. Yeah. So homework will be like, it won't feel like a lot of code. So if writing code feels intimidating, it's not going to be a lot of code.
Yeah, and it's on grade school, only grade school.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and sometimes I feel very tired because today and Tuesday I have 5 courses. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you taking any other econ?
Yeah, I'm taking inter micro.
Oh yeah, with Kevin.
Yeah, with Kevin.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's a hard class, but it's really good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, nice to have you in class.
Alright.
Thank you.